The Singapore Strategy: How One Island Created the World's Smartest Child Population. Take a look at the global education rankings today. Again and again, one country sits near the top in mathematics, science, and problem solving. It beats nations that are 10 times larger. It outperforms countries that spend far more on education. And it does all of this with a population smaller than many cities. That country is Singapore. In international assessments like PISA and TIMSS, Singaporean students repeatedly rank among the highest performing learners on Earth. In some years, they lead the world in mathematics and science literacy. But here is the real mystery. Singapore was not always an education powerhouse. In fact, when it became independent in 1965, it was one of the most vulnerable nations in the world. No natural resources, no oil, very little land, high unemployment, deep ethnic tensions. Its leaders realized something brutal but important. If Singapore wanted to survive, it could not compete using land, minerals, or military power. It had only one resource that could change its future: the human brain. So the country made a decision that would reshape its destiny. Education would become the engine of national survival, not just a policy, a strategy. And over the next 5 decades, Singapore quietly built one of the most precise and effective education systems ever created. Today we are breaking down how they did it. More importantly, we will explore the principles behind the system and why most countries struggle to replicate its results. Before we go deeper, subscribe to the channel if you want more research-driven breakdowns of how the world's smartest education systems actually work. And stay until the end, because the final strategy explains why copying Singapore without understanding its philosophy almost always fails. Let's begin where the strategy really starts. With teachers. Many countries say teachers are important. Singapore treats teachers like the backbone of national development. In most education systems, teaching is often viewed as a fallback career. If someone cannot enter medicine, engineering, or business, they may choose teaching. Singapore flipped that model. Teaching became one of the most selective professions in the country. Only top-performing graduates are invited to train as teachers, usually from the top third of university cohorts. These candidates are carefully screened not just for academic ability, but for communication skills, emotional intelligence, and leadership potential. And here is something remarkable. Singapore pays teacher trainees while they study. This sends a powerful message. Teaching is not just a job, it is a national responsibility. Once teachers enter the profession, the investment does not stop. Every educator receives about 100 hours of professional development every year. They analyze classroom data. They collaborate with other teachers. They refine teaching methods. And strong teachers are given clear career pathways. Some become master teachers who coach others. Some move into curriculum design. Others become school leaders. This constant professional growth creates something extremely rare. A system where teachers themselves are continuously learning. And when the teacher improves, the classroom improves. But strong teachers are only part of the story. The second pillar of Singapore's strategy lies in how students actually learn. Most education systems overload students with information. Textbooks become thicker. Curricula become longer. Students memorize formulas, dates, and definitions. Singapore took a very different approach. Instead of prioritizing memorization, the system prioritizes understanding. This philosophy became famous worldwide through something called Singapore math. If you have ever seen Singapore math textbooks, you will notice something unusual. Students are not immediately given formulas. Instead, they are guided through visual models and structured reasoning. A child learning fractions might use bar diagrams to visualize relationships between numbers. A student solving algebra problems may first explore the logic behind the equation rather than simply applying rules. This approach is often called the concrete, pictorial, abstract method. Students first interact with real objects or situations. Then they use diagrams and models. Only after that do they move to abstract symbols and equations. The goal is not to memorize procedures. The goal is to understand ideas deeply. This kind of training changes how students approach problems. When they face unfamiliar questions, they do not panic. They analyze. They reason. They experiment. And this is exactly the skill measured by global assessments like PISA, which focuses on problem solving rather than memorization. But Singapore's system does not stop at academic thinking. It also tries to recognize that intelligence comes in different forms. Early in the education journey, students are observed carefully for their strengths. Some show strong academic reasoning. Others demonstrate technical ability. Others excel in applied learning environments. Rather than forcing every student down the same narrow path, Singapore developed multiple education routes. There are academic tracks leading toward universities. There are polytechnic pathways focused on applied sciences and engineering. There are technical education institutes that train students for high-skill industries. This flexibility allows the system to capture different kinds of talent instead of losing them. It also reduces one of the biggest problems in education systems worldwide: the assumption that intelligence only exists inside exam scores. But here is where the story becomes more interesting. For many years, Singapore's system was known for intense academic pressure. Students faced major national exams that shaped their educational paths. Over time, leaders began asking a difficult question. Was the system becoming too focused on grades? Education experts realized that the world economy was changing. The future would require creativity, collaboration, and adaptability. So the government launched a major shift known as the Teach Less, Learn More initiative. Despite its simple name, the philosophy behind it is profound. Instead of overwhelming students with content, teachers focus on deeper learning experiences. Students conduct projects. They explore interdisciplinary ideas. They learn to ask questions rather than simply repeat answers. Schools began introducing makerspaces, innovation labs, and collaborative learning environments. The goal is to develop curious minds rather than just high-scoring test takers. And this transition reflects something important about Singapore's leadership style. The country constantly studies its own success and adapts when necessary. Now, if you are finding this breakdown useful, like the video and share it with someone interested in how education systems actually shape the future of nations. Because what we are discussing here is not just about schools. It is about economic strategy. And this brings us to one of the most overlooked parts of Singapore's success: long-term planning. In many countries, education reforms change every few years depending on political leadership. A new government arrives. A new curriculum is introduced. Teachers must adapt again. Singapore approached education with decades-long planning cycles. Policies evolve slowly and carefully. Successful experiments are expanded across the system. Ineffective ones are adjusted rather than abandoned abruptly. This stability allows educators to focus on teaching rather than constantly adapting to political changes. But perhaps the most powerful factor behind Singapore's success lies outside the classroom: culture. In Singapore, education is deeply respected. Families value learning. Parents invest time supporting their children's studies. Students grow up surrounded by the expectation that effort and discipline lead to opportunity. This cultural environment reinforces everything happening inside schools. And when strong policy meets strong culture, the results become powerful. Today, Singapore's students consistently rank among the highest performers in the world in mathematics, science, and reading literacy. The country has also become a global hub for technology, finance, and advanced manufacturing. Education helped transform a vulnerable island into one of the most competitive economies on Earth. But here is the final and most important lesson. The Singapore strategy is not a single policy. It is a system. A system built on several principles working together. Invest heavily in teachers. Focus on deep understanding rather than memorization. Recognize different forms of intelligence. Continuously refine the system. And treat education as a national priority. Many countries try to copy Singapore math textbooks or testing structures. But without the broader philosophy behind them, the results rarely match. Because the real secret is not the curriculum. The real secret is commitment. Singapore built its education system with the seriousness of a nation designing its future. And that future continues to evolve. Today, the country is exploring artificial intelligence in classrooms, personalized learning technologies, and interdisciplinary education models that combine science, computing, and humanities. The next generation of Singaporean students may grow up learning in environments that blend human teaching with advanced learning systems. But the core idea remains the same. Human intelligence is the most valuable resource any nation can cultivate. Before you leave, share your thoughts in the comments. What is the biggest problem in your country's education system right now? Is it poor teaching quality, outdated curriculum, or lack of long-term planning? Your answers often shape future videos on this channel. And if you want to understand how the world's smartest education systems work and how learning itself is evolving in the age of AI, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the future of education is being redesigned right now. And the nations that understand this first will shape the world tomorrow.